Queen Lyra sat on the high seat of her shining throne room, her crown made of bright silver and small glowing stones. Around her, advisors and guards stood waiting for her words. The air in the hall was cool and calm, and only the soft hum of the energy lights filled the silence. Lyra looked proud, strong and calm, like someone born to rule. For many years, she had ruled over the wide lands of the Terran Dominion. Her cities rose into the clouds, her armies held great weapons, and her people lived with peace. Machines worked for them, and computers made their choices faster than any human could think. Life seemed safe and perfect. In this world of power and order, old stories from the past sounded like empty laughter to her. Lyra often liked to listen to the old historians speak about the early days of humankind. They told stories of warriors who had no machines, who fought battles by hand and heart. These men and women faced storms, pain, and danger without any help from high technology. They carried steel swords instead of energy rifles. They guarded others not for orders, but out of duty and love. To Queen Lyra, those stories sounded sweet but foolish. "Humans once fought like that," she said one evening, leaning back in her chair while her court gathered to hear her speak. "Without any shields, without any armor, without the mind links to guide them. It sounds like trying to fight lightning with a wooden stick." The hall filled with light laughter. Her advisors nodded, and even the guards cracked slight smiles. Lyra smiled, pleased. She knew her people agreed. To her, warriors without machines were like children pretending to be strong. She often said, "Those tales are written to make old times look golden." In truth, people then were weak and lost. They feared the world. "We have mastered it," and the courtiers bowed and told her she was wise. Sometimes, when the evening grew quiet, an old historian named Samuel dared to speak softly. Samuel was a thin man with gray hair and kind eyes. He spent most of his life studying human stories before the rise of the Dominion. One night he said, "Your Majesty, bravery has no time. The heart of courage is the same now as it was then." Lyra looked at him with gentle amusement. "You think courage survived this long?" she asked. "It never left," he said quietly. "It only sleeps until it is needed." Lyra waved him off kindly but did not answer. In her heart, she thought Samuel's words were warm but foolish dreams of an old man. Outside her palace, the Dominion stretched across continents. Towers of glass and silver gleamed under the sun. Roads moved by their own power, and airships filled the skies. Everything was clean, ordered, and exact. The people lived with no need for fear of hunger or war. Yet sometimes, Lyra wondered why her people still spoke of the past with such soft voices, as if they missed something long lost. One afternoon, she walked through the royal garden filled with clear water fountains and trees from the old forests. She watched the sunlight play over the leaves and thought of the stories again. She could picture those dusty warriors from ancient Earth, standing under storm clouds, faces dirty and hearts full. It was hard to believe such people had ever lived. If they were real, she said to herself with a small smile, then how weak this world must have been before the machines. When she returned to her hall, one of her military captains approached with a message. There was soon to be a great combat display between the Dominion and the human settlements of the outer colonies. It would be a friendly duel to mark the start of new peace talks. The event, though not dangerous, was meant to show honor and strength. Lyra decided to attend. She thought it would be nice entertainment, a simple show of skill between soldiers. The captain bowed and left, and Lyra turned back to her throne with a small laugh. "Maybe they will bring one of those old-fashioned warriors this time," she said with a grin. "I would like to see how brave they are without their toys." Her attendants laughed politely. But Samuel, standing quietly among them, said nothing. His old eyes shone with a calm, knowing light, and for a brief second, Queen Lyra thought his silence looked almost like pity. She quickly brushed away the thought. How could any old tale from the dust of history ever shake the strength of her mighty dominion? Yet deep inside her, something small and strange moved a thought barely born, a whisper that perhaps not every story was made to be mocked. But she ignored it and went on, unaware that soon she would see with her own eyes how true the old legends were. The morning sun was soft and golden when Queen Lyra stepped into the royal balcony. The city spread below her like a silver ocean, full of lights, towers, and airships gliding gracefully between the clouds. Everything in her world looked perfect, controlled, and strong. She had never seen real battle, only the clean, distant images from the Dominion's training displays. In her mind, war was a thing of mathematics and machines, always neat and balanced. As the sunrise warmed her face, her messenger arrived. He walked quickly, bowing low before he spoke. "Your Majesty, the day of the combat exhibition has been decided. It will take place at the Grand Arena 2 days from now." She nodded calmly. "And who fights under our flag?" "Captain Varys Kane, Majesty, our finest soldier." "Good," said Lyra, pleased. "Let him remind the colonies who leads humanity now." The captain bowed again and turned to leave, but she stopped him. "Who represents the colonies?" The messenger checked his tablet before answering. "A man named Ethan Cole." Lyra frowned. "Ethan Cole. I have never heard that name." "Neither have I, Majesty. He is a captain from an independent station beyond the outer rim of our systems. Records say he has no advanced implants, no neural guidance. Nothing more than basic equipment." Lyra raised an eyebrow, her lips curling into a small smile. "They send a man with no implants? How quaint. Perhaps they wish to amuse us." The messenger said nothing more. He knew better than to argue. The rest of the day, Lyra thought about that name, Ethan Cole. She imagined a proud man trying to pretend he was strong. The idea made her laugh silently. "Let him come," she said to herself. "Let him show the world that courage alone wins no wars." 2 days later, the grand arena filled with people. Thousands came to see the contest. The seats rose high around the open field of smooth white stone. Above, energy domes shimmered faintly, keeping the air clear and still. On one side stood the soldiers of the Dominion, their uniforms shining silver and blue. On the other side stood a smaller group from the colonies, quiet and calm. Queen Lyra arrived late, making the crowd rise in respect. She wore a smooth white dress lined with soft silver cloth that caught the light like water. Her crown glowed gently. As she took her seat upon the raised viewing stand, the music stopped. All eyes turned to the center of the arena. Ethan Cole entered first. He was tall, built like someone used to real work, not artificial strength. His outfit was plain gray armor, light and simple, marked only with a small crest near his shoulder. Carried a blade, not a plasma staff or phase rifle, but a real steel sword, old in design yet bright and clean. There were scars on his hands, and his eyes looked calm but focused, like a man who knew exactly who he was. The crowd murmured in confusion. Some laughed softly, others frowned. Even Queen Lyra leaned forward slightly. Beside her, one advisor whispered, "He does not even use a neural visor. He cannot see the data trails of his opponent. He will fail in seconds." Lyra said nothing but smiled. The match had not begun, but she already believed her champion would win easily. A gate opened on the opposite side of the arena, and Captain Varys Kane stepped out. His armor shone with advanced plates, his weapon glowed faint blue, and tiny drones hovered near his shoulders like silver insects ready to strike. The people cheered for their hero. The announcer spoke the simple words that began the match. For honor, for peace, for understanding between humankind. Combat will begin. A bell echoed once, and silence followed. Ethan stood motionless, his sword resting loosely in his hand. Varys moved first, fast as lightning, his armor boosting his strength. He swung his energy weapon in a smooth arc, expecting to end it quickly. But Ethan moved aside, not with the mechanical sharpness of a machine, but with natural rhythm, as if his feet already knew where to go before his mind told them. The blade missed him by a breath. Gasps filled the stands. Lyra blinked in surprise. "Could have been luck," she said quietly to herself. Varys attacked again, harder this time. His drones fired beams of light that cut through the air, leaving glowing streaks. Ethan spun aside, blocked one, and rolled under another beam, the steel sword flashing quick as a spark. With one precise stroke, he cut through a drone, sending it crashing in pieces to the ground. The crowd erupted with shouts, unsure what they were seeing. Queen Lyra watched closely now, her smile gone. The man's movements were clean, sure, graceful. He did not fight like someone guessing. He fought like someone who had lived this dance many times before, each strike born from memory, not code. Samuel, standing near the queen's seat, whispered softly, "The heart of courage never sleeps." But Lyra did not hear him. Her attention was fixed on the man in the arena. The sound of steel echoed against the hum of machines. And for the first time in her life, Queen Lyra did not laugh at the words of the old stories. She was watching one come alive before her very eyes. The sun rose bright and warm over the wide stone arena. People from every part of the Dominion came to watch the great combat display. The air was full of voices, cheers, and the low hum of engines from the airships that hovered above. Queen Lyra sat on her tall seat made of silver metal, her gown shining like white glass in the light. Around her, nobles and soldiers stood in proud formation. This was the day she had been waiting for, the day her champion would show the power of the Dominion. Across the arena floor stood the two chosen fighters. One of them was Captain Varys, a soldier known for perfect obedience and mastery of advanced armor. His suit shone with lines of soft blue light that moved like rivers. Tiny drones floated behind his shoulders, their lenses glowing red. He looked larger than life, like a man wrapped in thunder. The crowd cheered loudly when he raised his weapon toward the sky, proud and full of confidence. The other man stood quietly at the far end. His name was Ethan Cole. He looked simple compared to his opponent, wearing light armor that showed his plain gray undersuit beneath. His only weapon was a steel sword strapped to his back. The shine of it was dull, old in design. He had no drones, no glowing helmet, no control chips on his arms or neck. The crowd went quiet when they saw him. Some people whispered to each other in shock. Others laughed and pointed, thinking he must be only there to amuse the queen. Lyra leaned forward and whispered to Samuel, who stood behind her. "He looks like someone from a farm, not a soldier. Do they think this is a performance?" Samuel did not smile. "Sometimes, Majesty, the quiet ones have the loudest hearts." Lyra did not understand what he meant. To her, Ethan looked slow, small, and weak. She turned her eyes back to the shining Captain Varys and smiled. "This will be over before noon," she said softly. The signal bell rang 3 times, each sound echoing around the high walls of the arena. The people held their breath, waiting for the first movement. For a moment, no one moved. Then Varys took one heavy step forward, and the ground under him trembled. His drones rose higher like hunting hawks ready to strike. Raised his weapon, an energy staff that hummed with blue light. Ethan did not move, simply drew his sword with one calm motion. The sound of metal sliding free rang through the silence. His face was steady and calm. His eyes never blinked. Varys charged first. He moved fast, faster than any human could without help. His drones fired bright beams across the floor, turning the air into ribbons of light. The queen's court gasped in delight. But when the beams reached Ethan, they struck only air. Ethan had already stepped aside. His movements were clean and smooth, not hurried, not stiff, like a dance that his body already knew. One moment he was in front of the attack, and the next he had slipped behind it, blade flashing once like a silver breath. One of the drones fell to the stone ground in 2 smoking pieces. The crowd went silent. Lyra's smile slowly faded. Varys attacked again, fierce and angry now. His armor flared with light as he spun his staff, sending a wave of energy across the arena. Dust lifted, filling the air with a low roar. But when it settled, Ethan was standing there, untouched. His sword tip pointed toward the ground. "You are quick," Varys said through his mask, his voice cold and metallic. "Not quick," Ethan answered softly, "just clear." This time Varys did not waste words. He ran again, his weapon flashing, the drone circling. Ethan turned aside every blow, moving lighter than the wind. Then, when the perfect moment came, he stepped close and pressed his sword against the side of Varys' armor. The old steel cut clean through. Sparks roared up like small fireworks. Varys stumbled back, his weapon slipping from his hands. The fight had lasted barely more than a minute. The crowd sat frozen, unable to believe what they had seen. Varys, champion of the Dominion, was on one knee, his armor smoking, eyes wide with disbelief. Ethan stood before him, his clothes dusty, but his breathing calm. He lowered his sword in respect. Queen Lyra did not speak. Her fingers tightened on the armrest of her chair. The air around her seemed to have grown heavier. Everyone in the royal box waited for her to say something. Finally, she found her voice. "How?" she whispered.
Ow.
"How did he do that without any machine?" Samuel looked at her and said quietly, "Majesty, that is what real warriors once were." Ethan turned, bowed to the queen, and walked slowly out of the arena, while the crowd stayed silent. The simple sound of his footsteps was louder than all the noise before. Queen Lyra wanted to speak, but could not. Inside her mind, something had changed. The stories she had mocked no longer seemed foolish. She had just seen one of them brought to life. The evening after the battle was quiet. The sky above the great city of the Dominion glowed a soft silver. From the high windows of the palace, the air seemed still, almost afraid to move. Queen Lyra sat alone in her council chamber. Her crown rested on the table beside her, and her long coat hung carelessly over the back of the chair. On the screen before her were replays of the combat frames of movement slowed almost to stillness. Every time she watched, the same thought came to her mind. The way Ethan Cole moved should have been impossible. The sensors had not detected any interference or energy fields, nothing that explained his speed or grace. He had fought with only his mind and body, and he had won. She played the moment again, the one where Ethan stepped aside at the perfect second, where he saw through Captain Varys's attack before the blow even began. Lyra leaned forward, studying his face. He had not looked angry or wild. In those silent pictures he looked calm, even kind, as if the fight were not about hatred but about truth. For the first time, she felt unsure of what kind of world she ruled. A soft knock echoed through the chamber door. Samuel entered, walking carefully with his usual slow steps. The old historian bowed deeply. "Majesty," he said quietly, "you asked for me." She nodded and pointed to the seat near her. He sat, folding his hands on his knees. "Do you believe he cheated?" Lyra asked. Her voice was firm but low. "Do you think there is some hidden tool, some secret energy that our scans missed?" Samuel shook his head. "No, Majesty. I believe you saw only a man being what a man can truly be." Lyra frowned. "A man cannot outmatch a soldier with machines stronger than him." "Yes," said Samuel. "That is what we all believed, that you witnessed something different. You saw what courage looks like when it walks without help." She turned off the screen and looked at him directly. "Courage," she repeated softly, testing the word like an unfamiliar taste. "We use that word in speeches, but it feels smaller than what I saw. Because it is not just courage," he said, "is the oldest power we ever had. Before tools, before machines, humans fought out of love and duty. They trusted what they felt and learned from the pain they carried." Lyra sighed and leaned back. "Do you mean to say all our progress made us weak?" Samuel shook his head again. "It's not weak. Comfortable. But comfort can make strong hearts slow." His eyes met hers. Ethan Cole reminded the world what it means to be human. His words stayed in her heart after he left. That night, she could not sleep. She stepped out into the moonlit garden. Fountains whispered around her, and the air was cool and light. Her mind played through the fight again and again. She had mocked the old tales, called the ancient soldiers foolish, yet she had seen truth move before her eyes. She wondered if the old warriors fought for something that the modern world had forgotten. The next morning, she called for Captain Varys. He came limping into the room, his armor replaced with simple cloth. He bowed stiffly, shame still heavy in his eyes. She told him to sit. "You fought well," she said softly. "You did everything right, yet he won." Varys nodded. "Majesty, I followed every pattern, every prediction model. My suit told me his movements before he took them, but still, I could not stop him. It was as if he felt the world differently." Lyra looked down at the small silver ring she wore. "Perhaps he did," she said. "Perhaps feeling is the one thing our machines cannot teach." Varys looked unsure how to answer. At last he said, "He bowed to me when it ended. He could have shamed me, but he did not." His voice grew quiet. He said, "It is not about who wins. It is about remembering who we are." I did not understand then, but now I do. Lyra watched the morning light touch the walls. For a long time she said nothing. Then she stood and faced him. "You understand more than you think," she said. "Send the word to the archives. I want every story about the early warriors restored. When he left, she stayed by the window. Below her, the city shimmered with its silver towers. Everything looked perfect, yet somewhere under all the noise and shine, she knew something deeper waited to be found. And in that quiet hour, for the first time, Queen Lyra envied a man who fought with nothing but his hands, his heart, and the endless courage of being human. The next sunrise was bright and full, spilling gold across the city towers. Queen Lyra stood by the large window of her palace, the morning light touching her hands. Far below, the city was already awake. Airships moved between towers, people hurried along the walkways, and drones carried supplies through the silver sky. Life was calm and clean again, but her heart felt heavier than before. It had been 3 days since the duel. The Dominion still spoke of the strange battle between Captain Varys and Ethan Cole. Every news channel replayed it. Every message board filled with wonder about the man who had fought without help. Some called him reckless, others called him a hero. But to Lyra, he had become something far more powerful than either. He had become proof that the old stories were not lies. Her advisors had told her to forget it all, to call the fight an accident of skill or luck, yet she could not erase what she had seen. Ethan's calm, his grace, the way he bowed to his beaten opponent instead of boasting it, had stirred something in her. Something she did not know still lived inside her chest. She remembered how certain she had been that humans could no longer reach greatness without machines. Now she understood that true power was never bought or built, it was simply lived. Later that morning, Queen Lyra called for Samuel. The old historian came, as always, soft in movement but clear in gaze. She was not wearing her crown this time. As he entered, she was practicing with a steel sword, the same kind Ethan had used. The sword felt heavy in her hands. She swung carefully, clumsy, but determined. Samuel watched quietly until she stopped and looked at him, slightly out of breath. "I have read so many of your books, Samuel," she said with a small smile, "but I never believed them. I see now how blind I was." Samuel bowed slightly. "You believed what the world taught you to believe, Majesty. It takes courage to see beyond that." She placed the sword gently on the table. "Courage," she said. "That word again. He showed me what it means. He made me feel it, not just hear it." Samuel nodded. "Every generation must be reminded of it. We build machines to protect us, and then we forget how to protect ourselves. But courage always returns in someone's heart when it is needed most." They stood in silence for a long moment. Finally, Lyra spoke again. "Send word to the colonies," she said. "Invite Ethan Cole to the capital. I wish to speak with him before he returns home." When Ethan arrived 2 days later, the entire court turned to watch. He came without a guard, wearing his same plain gray uniform, carrying only the sword that had made him famous. He looked humble, almost shy, as he entered the grand hall. Lyra rose from her seat and stepped down from the dais to meet him face to face. "You could have demanded anything after your victory," she said. "Why did you vanish instead?" Ethan smiled softly. "Because I came to remind, not to rule. The fight was not against your army, Your Majesty. It was against forgetfulness." She studied him quietly. "You believe we have forgotten what it is to be human?" He looked toward the high window where sunlight poured in. "You have built wonders," he said, "but wonders mean nothing if they make people smaller inside. Machines can build cities, but only people can give them a soul. That is all I wanted to show." She felt tears rise but said nothing. The room was completely silent. Every soldier, every courtier, watched the two of them stand there, as if history itself was holding its breath. At last Lyra spoke in a quiet voice. "I mocked the old legends," she said. "I thought they were too simple for a world like ours. Now I know they are the only reason our world exists." Ethan bowed low, his voice steady and gentle, and the legends have done their work. He turned to leave, the sound of his footsteps echoing softly through the hall. When the great doors closed behind him, Queen Lyra stood among her people with a heart full of peace and new understanding. In the months that followed, the Queen changed many things. She rebuilt training schools for young soldiers to learn both modern and traditional combat. She reopened the archives so children could read the stories of the first warriors. She even walked among her people more often, speaking not as a ruler above them, but as one who had finally remembered where she came from. People began to whisper her name with love rather than fear. They said that the Queen had seen a true warrior, and had been changed by his courage. And in the city squares and quiet homes, old songs of the early heroes began to be sung again. Deep inside her heart, Queen Lyra knew she would always remember that moment in the arena, the glint of the steel, the stillness before the strike, and the calm face of a man who fought not for power, not for glory, but for the simple truth that being human was still the greatest strength of all.